we ask that tonight you uphold the Planning Commission's denial of the project. We ask that you deny the appeal, and we ask that you deny the application for the proposed change of use of the corner of MacArthur and Lakeshore. Now, this little public open space goes by a few different names. Some people call it Lakeview Park. That's what the staff called it. The general plan has called it East Shore Park, and we simply call it Astro Park after the small tot lot that exists in that location. But whatever you call it, this is the place that we're referring to. It's considered by many to be a respite, right, from the urban scene. It's a splash of green, if you will, in the built environment of our Grand Lake neighborhood. So let's start with some big picture planning. The city's open space plan states that existing park acreage is inadequate to meet the community's needs, and that's really our starting point. Oaklanders are already operating at a recreational deficit. Granted, the dog park was identified in the Lake Merritt master plan as a potential use, quote unquote. However, at the same time, the Lake Merritt master plan's guiding principles on recreation states, improve the park as a place of informal outdoor recreation. Oakland's youth should especially benefit from the lake's resources. And benefit they do. If you look at these pictures, the following pictures were all taken at Lakeview Park, right where the fenced dog run would be. East Shore Park is a vibrant, thriving urban green space when it's activated. Generations of Oaklanders have grown up playing on this field. It's a tradition that continues. It's established. The lawn where the dog run is planned is a place of healthy diversity. A variety of ages, cultures, nationalities, and physical abilities currently use the space. It's a joyful place, and it's not for a single purpose, but rather it's flexible and unprogrammed. And it's open and unfenced, and the space is shared, and no one is excluded. No one has ownership, and yet everyone has ownership. It's a place that promotes the best of Oakland. And it's a place where young people play hard and where kinship is fostered. It's a park of community, and the open lawn provides the kind of healthy living that we all want for the youth of our city. But the park is relatively small. According to your staff report, the area between El Embarcadero and MacArthur Blvd is only about 3.5 acres, but it gets lots of use. And more all the time as the surrounding neighborhoods continue to thrive. The city's open space element of the general plan states that East Shore Park is generally a better site for active recreation due to the large open lawn area. And now those are important words. It's a better site for active recreation because it has a large open lawn. And you can see why here. This is not an uncommon scene during evenings and weekends. Now, your staff report states that the dog run would only take up about 23% or about 1/4 of Lakeview Park. And here's a drawing that the dog park proponents have used in the past, and it looks small, right? Well, here's another perspective. Including the setbacks around the fenced dog area, which would be not usable for active recreation, the proposal would take away about half of the existing open lawn at this small neighborhood or park. So, in a way, the proposal for a fenced area creates the classic tragedy of the commons. And not to be melodramatic about it, but your decision tonight determines whether this lawn is lost for future generations. And that's a real issue for Oaklanders who rely on the park's flexibility, like these adults and various youth groups. So, last May, the Planning Commission found that the dog play area would take away open lawn area that is currently valued for active recreation by multiple users and would therefore not conform with the general plan. Now here's a photograph of the project sponsors staking out the proposed fences that would take away the open lawn area. And we agree with the Planning Commission's findings for denial that state the desirable neighborhood character would be affected by physically fencing off part of the open field, and that the fencing off of grass and replacement of wood chips would adversely affect the visual attractiveness of this high-profile location and setting, and that the proximity to a children's playground creates a potential for safety impacts, and that there could be health-related impacts if dog waste is not cleaned up. And the Planning Commission was correct when it found that if not diligently maintained, the dog area could potentially become a visual blight. And if you're looking for evidence, it's around. Several of our urban dog runs in Oakland are generally unsightly because volunteer enthusiasm eventually fades. And here are a couple of examples. Now, the Lake Merritt Master Plan expresses the community's desire for a properly maintained and operated park. And the Master Plan states that simply recommending the programs and identifying costs will not go far enough to ensure the long-term successful maintenance of the park. And as proposed, the dog area would be surrounded with metal fencing, and the lawn would be removed and replaced with wood chips. Now, because dog parks are high maintenance, the gateway to the lake is not the place for it. Simply put, in this location, the stakes are too high. And given the potential problems, we believe this open lawn is far too valuable to be fenced off for one user group. Now, all over the nation, cities are working hard to grapple with how to address the need for dog parks. And as Emily said, the best example we've seen for coming up with alternatives is the process used by the city of Seattle. In 2005, the Trust for Public Land published a document called Creating Dog Parks Without Rancor, and we believe the city of Oakland should use such an approach. About 70 potential sites were identified in Seattle by the Parks and Recreation Development in cooperation with COLA, which is the Citizens of Off-Leash Areas. And 8 sites were used to develop site selection criteria. They're listed here. They include interference with established uses, abutting residences, avoiding children's play areas, choosing locations with minimal impacts on the visual character of the park, spillover. And as we know, the Planning Commission found the dog play area to be inconsistent with Oakland's policies, but let's see how it stacks up to Seattle's criteria. So the first one is the prime time for playing at the tot lot and on the lawn would occur during the same prime time for dog park use, evenings and weekends, because, well, that's when people are around, right? That's when they're home from work and school. And East Shore Park is small. Therefore, avoiding interference with established uses would be impossible. And here's some of the established uses, right? Volleyball and circle rules football and acrobatics and flag football and yoga flash mob and capoeira and slacklining. And then some of the organized uses, such as squash drive and the rehabilitation center and strongman boot camp and others. If dogs are corralled inside the fenced enclosure at Lakeview Park, there just wouldn't be enough room for everyone else outside the fences of the dog run. For example, these fellas here having a good time would have to compete for space with this organized group called Girls on the Run, who use the other side of the park. And these girls cover a lot of ground when they run. Or consider Bay Hill High School and their wonderful use of the playfield. The proposed dog enclosure would interfere and impact their use of the open lawn for physical education and active sports. And other groups would be likely impacted by the loss of unprogrammed open space, such as the local chapter of the Special Olympics team. This Northern California chapter of the Special Olympics trains seasonally at Lakeview Park. And then there's just the random play space that's needed for children, not to mention other organized youth programs like soccer shots. And the groups play every Saturday. This group plays every Saturday at the park. And if fenced out, these young adults would be in competition with adults in a pickup game on whatever is left over on the remaining lawn. Another criterion that Seattle put into place is that the dog park shouldn't be near residences. Now, that's not such an issue here at Lakeview Park. However, there are a few condos and apartments that look down on the green space, which provides an amenity to those residents. Of course, dog parks are also an important amenity. But because they're fenced, they're better located in underutilized locations, such as this one in Alameda. And regarding parking, well, we all know there's not enough. Traffic is already congested in our neighborhood. And if built, this dog park would be popular. And it would likely be a regional draw, causing increased congestion and parking problems. And regardless of how many people would walk to the park with their dogs, and it would be a lot, other people would drive here from further away or farther away. And that's a fact. People drive to dog parks. According to a UC Davis study, dog park users drive to dog parks 95% of the time. And according to the EIR that was done for the Measure DD project, approximately 3,700 cars per hour pass the intersection of Lakeshore and MacArthur during peak evening times. And the proposed dog enclosure would add vehicular traffic precisely at that time, right? During peak dog use hours, which coincide with peak evening traffic. And on Saturdays. Now, the proximity of the dog park to the tot lot is a real issue. As you can see, the entrance of the dog run is close to the children's area. And the tot lot is very popular with dozens of kids on weekends. And a popular dog run would likely have dozens of dogs during the same period, afternoons and weekends. And conflicts between dogs and children, at some point, are inevitable. Therefore, the Planning Commission denied the application for this project because it found, in part, that the proximity to a children's playground creates a potential for safety impacts. And the fifth criterion is to choose sites where there are minimal impacts on the visual character of the park. Now, this is the rendering that was prepared by ODOG and the project sponsors. This is the proposed visual character of the dog run. Now, this is the existing visual character of our neighborhood park. A fenced dog run would clearly impact the visual character of this open space. And that's a problem because East Shore Park is identified as a gateway in Oscar. That's your document. The Lake Merritt Master Plan says this about gateways. They highlight the sense of identity of our built environments. They serve as points of reference and often highlight the unique qualities of our environment. And this is why we agree with the findings for denial that say the fencing off of grass and the replacement with wood chips would adversely affect the visual attractiveness of this high-profile location and setting. And not only would the dog park be inconsistent with the neighborhood character, the dog area would also be very large. In the distance, you can see the proposed location of the far fence. The dog run would be far too big for this small neighborhood park. And the grass would be replaced with wood chips, as shown here in the Loney Park. And as you can see, during a wet winter, wood chips and dirt can be a mess. And if drainage is a problem, like it is at Lakeview Park and also at the Alameda Dog Park, the mud makes the park even more unattractive. Grass always looks good, right? Even when it's swampy, or when it's being played on, or when it's simply a green gateway to the Lake Merritt neighborhoods. Now, the City of Seattle's sixth criterion for successful dog park advice: avoid sites where there will be spillover into non-dog areas. The popularity of a dog run, we think, would likely have unexpected consequences on the remaining spaces, including the public sidewalks and lawn area. And lastly, there's the issue of the lawn's value as a wintertime foraging area for visiting birds. So when you review all of this project against the criteria that was adopted by the City of Seattle, the Lakeview Dog Play Area does not pass the test. So, in summary, with 2.5 minutes to go, in Oakland, we pride ourselves on diversity. And this is the kind of thinking that a small group of neighbors embraced when it chose to speak up to protect and conserve Astro Park for a broad array of recreational uses. But this kind of thinking isn't happening in just a small group. Thousands of like-minded neighbors have now come to agree that a dog park in the Lake Merritt area may be the right idea, but that Astro Park is the wrong place. And that's because our little neighborhood commons is extremely valuable as unprogrammed open space in the middle of our thriving neighborhood. It provides active recreation. It provides psychological and physical well-being. Provides healthy living for young and old alike, and it provides relief from the urban environment. And it does all of that right at our gateway, the Lake Merritt District. Now, thousands of Oaklanders are hoping to wake up tomorrow knowing that Lakeview Park is still unfenced and open for future generations. Council members, that's why we're asking you to uphold the Planning Commission's decision, a decision that was clear and resolute. And tonight we ask you to vote no and deny the permit application for a fenced dog area at Lakeview Park. Thank you very much.